Have you ever been in an airplane? If you have, then chances are high that you've experienced pitch problems during takeoff or landing. In fact, one of the most common mistakes pilots make is incorrect pitch. But what exactly is pitch, and why can it be so deadly? You may already know about the three axes of aircraft motion: roll, pitch, and yaw. Roll is a rotation around the longitudinal axis, which is from nose to tail. Pitch is a rotation around the lateral axis, which is from wing to wing. And yaw is a rotation around the vertical axis, which is from left to right. Shortly after takeoff, the pilots noticed that the plane was pitching violently. As the plane approached its destination, it began to experience severe turbulence. The crew turned on the autopilot system to help them stabilize the plane. But shortly after that, the plane started to pitch dangerously. They struggled to regain control of the plane for a few minutes before finally succeeding. The plane was approaching the runway at 160 knots when suddenly the plane started to nose over. The plane was carrying 239 people. The plane touched down on the runway, but it started to nose over. The left wing hit the ground and the plane skidded off the runway. The plane was carrying 110 passengers and 7 crew members. The plane was carrying 267 passengers and 12 crew members. The plane was approaching the runway at 160 knots when suddenly the crew felt violent buffeting. The plane dropped 200 feet in a matter of seconds. The crew tried to recover from the incident, but they were unsuccessful. Pilots are trained to handle these situations, but sometimes even the best pilots make mistakes. That's why it's important to always wear your seatbelt when you're on an airplane. You never know when you might need it. The plane hit the ground hard, burst into flames, and everyone on board was killed. An investigation found that the crash was caused by the pilot's failure to follow proper landing procedures. The plane was cruising at 390 knots when suddenly the crew felt violent buffeting. But if you ever experience severe buffeting in an airplane, it's important to take action immediately. Be sure to follow the advice of the flight attendants and the pilots and brace for impact if necessary. The plane dropped 10,000 feet in a matter of seconds. Another problem with the plane's pitch is known as departure from controlled flight. This happens when the plane's pitch is off so badly that the plane loses all of its aerodynamic forces and can no longer fly. When this happens, the plane will typically start to fall rapidly towards the ground. This can be extremely dangerous and often results in the plane crashing. The crew tried to recover from the incident, but they were unsuccessful. The plane was carrying 210 passengers and 9 crew members. The plane was cruising at 35,000 feet. When the pilots started to experience problems with the plane's pitch, the plane started to drop rapidly, and the pilots were unable to recover from the incident. The plane hit a Russian village, and everyone on board was killed. An investigation found that the crash was caused by a combination of factors, including the pilot's failure to follow proper flight procedures and the plane's malfunctioning autopilot system. The plane hit a mountainside in Iran, and everyone on board was killed. An investigation found that the crash was caused by an explosive decompression in the cargo hold, which caused the plane to lose control. The plane sustained extensive damage, but luckily, there were no injuries. An investigation found that the crash was caused by a combination of factors, including the pilot's failure to follow proper landing procedures and the plane's high weight. The left wing hit the ground, and the plane skidded off the runway. The plane split in half and burst into flames. 154 out of the 182 people on board were killed. An investigation found that the crash was caused by the pilot's failure to follow proper landing procedures. A later investigation concluded that the extreme turbulence was the cause of the incident, which could have ended in disaster had the crew failed to recover. They tried to recover but were unsuccessful. The plane eventually crashed into a wooded area near the airport, killing all 6 crew members on board. The unsteady airflow creates pressure waves that travel along the fuselage of an aircraft, which in turn causes vibrations. Buffeting can be dangerous if it is severe enough, because it can cause the plane to lose altitude or even crash. Nosing over happens when the front of the plane goes down. If it's during takeoff, the plane may hit the ground hard enough to burst into flames. If it's during landing, it can damage the plane's engine or wings. In extreme cases, nosing over can cause the plane to lose control and crash. An investigation showed that the crash was caused by an erroneous design of a new flight control system, which led to the plane's tail breaking off. The plane was carrying 271 passengers and 13 crew members. When the plane reached a speed of 150 knots, the captain gave the order to take off. The plane's engines roared, and it began to move down the runway. But suddenly, the plane started to nose over. The left wing hit the ground, and the plane skidded off the runway. The plane burst into flames, and everyone on board was killed. An investigation found that a malfunction in the indicators turned off 2 of the plane's 3 engines, causing it to nose over. All these axes converge at the center of gravity of the plane. Hello, and welcome to this channel, where we bring you stories of daring escapes and crashes. The pitch of an aircraft is controlled by the elevators on the horizontal stabilizer, which are located on the tail of the aircraft. Pitching occurs when the plane keeps going up and down like a roller coaster. It happens when the elevators are not correctly balanced. The crew put the plane into autopilot mode to try to stabilize it, but shortly after that, the plane began to pitch dangerously. They tried their best to recover from the situation, but were unsuccessful. The plane crashed into a mountainside in Japan, killing all 113 people on board. An investigation revealed that the accident was caused by the separation of the tail assembly from the rest of the plane due to improper repair work. When the elevators are not correctly balanced, the plane will oscillate around its center of gravity. This can cause the plane to lose altitude or even crash. The elevators can change the pitch of the aircraft by deflecting upward or downward. When the plane's pitch is correct, it flies straight. But when the pitch is off, the plane will either go up or down too quickly, which can lead to disaster. Now that we understand how an aircraft moves, let's take a closer look at pitch. The first type of pitch problem we'll talk about today is called pitching. In 1963, a United Airlines DC-8 was on its way from San Francisco to Tokyo. When it began to experience severe turbulence, another serious pitching incident occurred in 2005 when a Boeing 747-700 was on its way from London to Chicago. One other noteworthy pitching incident occurred in 2013 when a Boeing 747-700 was flying from Dubai to Moscow. Now that we know about pitching, let's take a look at another type of pitch problem: nosing over. A deadly instance of nosing over occurred in 1980 when a DC-10 was taken off from Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Another deadly instance of nosing over occurred in 2009 when an Airbus A320 was landing at Barcelona Airport in Spain. There were 182 people on board. A less intense but still significant instance of nosing over occurred in 2013. Boeing 747-700 was landing at Oslo Airport in Norway. Another dangerous pitch problem is called buffeting, is a vibration felt in the body of an aircraft caused by unsteady airflow. An example of buffeting causing a fatal accident occurred in 1972 when a Boeing 707-300 was on a flight from Tehran to Paris. Buffeting can also cause planes to crash while landing. This happened in 1988 when a DC-10 was landing at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. It's important to remember that buffeting isn't always this severe. Sometimes it can just be a minor annoyance. What else could go wrong with the plane's pitch? Glad you asked. A tragic example of departure from controlled flight occurred in 2011 when a Boeing 747-700 was on its way from Newark, New Jersey, to Moscow's Domodedovo Airport. As you can see, pitch problems can be deadly. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like. We appreciate your support. Thank you for watching.